Hi, I'm Pratim Ranjan Bose, and you are watching Podcast with Pratim, presented by Iravati Research and Communication Center, or IRCC. In this edition, we will discuss Indonesia, a major strategic and trade partner with whom India has a 2000-year-old civilizational link. Most of the thermal coal that we import in India are from Indonesia. India also was a major buyer of palm oil before Indonesia imposed restrictions on exports. I have with me Indian Ambassador in Indonesia, Shri Sandeep Chakravorty. He was previously India's ambassador to Peru and Bolivia, Consul General in New York, and Deputy High Commissioner in Bangladesh. I know him from his Bangladesh days, and if I may say so, he has quite a fan base over there. Welcome to you, sir. Before we start the discussion, a quick brief on Indonesia. It is the largest economy in Southeast Asia. The country returned to democracy in 1998, right after the Asian financial crisis. Indonesia was once an oil exporting nation and a member of OPEC. That was before, largely due to East Timor, which is no more a part of the country. It has the largest Muslim population, but unlike in South Asia, where Arabic influence is evidenced even in names, many Indonesian names are derivatives of Sanskrit, indicating cultural lineage to India. Indonesians love Hindi films. Shah Rukh Khan is extremely popular there. Without its notorious traffic, the city of Jakarta is outstanding and has a great nightlife. Sir, let me move to the first question. So much of positive vibes, but so low people-to-people connect. Indonesians barely know the contemporary India, and Indonesians do not, and Indians also don't know much beyond Bali. In fact, they know less of Bali. If we go by the outbound travelers data to the entire Indian travelers to Southeast Asia, only 8% go to Indonesia. Malaysia gets 17%, and Indian travelers are Indians are one of the largest traveling class, most emerging, and a big spender. Indonesia does not feature in the top 15 sources of foreign tourists in India. Malaysia is 10th. Where did things go wrong? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bose. Is it okay if I call you Pratim? Is
Yes,
it
sir.
okay with you? Thank you. So thank you for inviting me to your podcast, and I am very happy that you are featuring Indonesia in your podcast. I think, as they say, every drop counts. So if this podcast goes to, create greater awareness about Indonesia and India, I think that's worth it. I would try to contextualize a little bit your comments, because in Malaysia may be one of the largest or one of the big tourism source countries for India, but we have to remember that Malaysia has a huge Indian diaspora. Okay, in fact the largest Indian diaspora outside of India is in Malaysia. It is in millions, 6-7 million Indians of. So if you analyze it, you will find that most of the arrivals are actually of the diaspora community rather than Malaysians. So we don't have such a large community or diaspora community in Indonesia. Another problem which I find it baffling. In fact, the observations that you're making are also my observations, and there is no easy answer to them. So I may be waffling a bit, and I may be deviating from the point, but I am trying to understand it myself. One factor which I think was responsible or is culprit of lesser people-to-people contact between Indonesia and India has been the lack of direct air connectivity. It is still a surprise to me that two large countries of Asia and the world, their capitals are not connected by a direct flight. So happily, this situation is changing, and we will also have direct flights connecting Jakarta and Delhi very soon. But till, let's say, July of 2023, just 1 year back, there was no direct flight connectivity between Indonesia and India. That has changed. Now we have 21 flights a week connecting Bali, Jakarta to Bombay, Delhi, and Bangalore, and several more flights are in the pipeline. So 2025, I think the flight connectivity situation will be much better than it has been in the past. Even the tourism traffic has been one-sided. We find most Indian tourists coming to Bali. India has become the second largest tourism source country for Indonesia. But the challenge is that whether we can take Indian tourists or Indonesia can attract Indian tourists to other destinations in Indonesia, because Indonesia is very rich in cultural heritage, in nature, and also, you know, the natural beauties are enormous. So there should be potential sites and places other than Bali where people can go. So I think that's a challenge that Indonesian tourism is facing, and it will be in our interest also to see that Indian tourists go to other destinations in Indonesia. You are right about Indonesians not going to India in large numbers. Partly it has been because of lack of direct air connectivity. Partly maybe because of promotion. Partly because maybe Indonesians don't travel far. They like to travel within their country and in the neighboring ASEAN region. So many reasons are there which contribute to less of Indonesian tourists traveling to India. But the numbers are changing, and I am confident that in the coming years we will find more Indonesian tourists traveling to India. There is potential. We are getting a lot of queries about mountain tourism, about adventure tourism, about Buddhist tourism in India. I think that that may be the new areas where we should work to attract Indonesian tourists.
Yeah. Bali, I think Bali, Denpasar was connected quite long ago, but so that means there has to be a one-way traffic, but the others were not connected. As you were saying, it's nice to hear that Jakarta is now connected.
No, even Denpasar was not connected till last year. In fact, after I came here, the Denpasar Jakarta route opened up, and then we have a Bangalore Denpasar route. So without even having direct connectivity, Bali was a big destination. You see several airlines like Vietjet and Emirates and AirAsia. They bring tourists from India through their hubs. So that was always
Mostly
happening.
through Thailand that people move. Yeah.
Of course, through
Also
Thailand, through
to
Ho Chi Minh,
Bangkok.
through Hanoi, through Singapore. SQ is a bigger player in this market, so it's a big player in this market. So they also get tourists. So our carriers and also Indonesian carriers, they are losing out on the business. So it is in their interest that they put more planes. Another problem which I think was facing our airlines was that they did not have the right mix of aircraft. Because Indonesia is just beyond the range of these single-aisle aircraft, which can take you to Middle East or to Thailand and Malaysia. But Indonesia is about 7 or 8 hours of flying time from India. So this single-aisle aircraft were not able to reach Indonesia.
Yes, seven
Whereas
to eight.
maybe it didn't have
Jakarta
the
is now
capacity
7 to 8 hours, isn't it, sir? Jakarta is
Jakarta is more than 7 hours from Delhi.
from
Yeah.
Delhi. Okay.
Yeah, from Delhi. And even Bombay, the Indigo flight takes 6 hours, but that's the maximum limit. So that has been a challenge. And maybe it did not have the traffic for the wide-bodied 777s. So it got stuck in this technical problem. But now that Indian carriers are getting long-range extended range single-aisle aircraft or double-aisle aircraft, which are not as big as the 777, I think that problem is getting solved. So it is a matter of time when we will start having more connectivity between Indonesia and India.
Uh, just a question that just came up to my mind. I mean, for neighborhood, we have that VGF under Uran and etc. I think we launched it pretty long ago. Indonesia is not included in the neighborhood or what? Because and whether the new flight that you are talking about will have some VGF, viability gap funding.
I don't think so. I don't think that international travel gets benefit of the VGF. I don't think so. I think those considerations go in for strategic reasons, but I don't think here it is because people are anyway coming. They may not be direct flight, but it's well connected through Singapore or Malaysia or even Thailand. So I don't think that is a solution.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Post-COVID, Indonesia is the second largest growth center after India. I mean, about major economies. But bilateral trade declined by 24% in financial year 23-24. India's exports are down by 40%. The trend continues as I check data till June. So first quarter of this fiscal. The question is why? As I saw it, refined petroleum, sugar, iron and steel, these three are down sharply. And we failed to see, if I look at the trade in West Asia, Europe, smartphones are now a rising export item from India in these areas, but it did not feature in Indonesian trade. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, no, I think it's an accurate observation, but if we analyze the observation, I think, or I'm sure that 2022-23, when we showed the best performance so far of bilateral trade of more than $38 billion, that was an outlier year. I don't think that was capturing the trend. And that was because of post-COVID situation in the world. Prices of coal and palm oil skyrocketed, so that reflected in volumes as well as in the quantity of trade. I think after that, the trade has normalized. You will have to understand that our trade is slightly strange in the sense that we buy primary material from Indonesia, raw material like palm oil and coal and certain other minerals, whereas we sell agricultural commodities, pharmaceuticals, engineering goods to Indonesia. So the ability for our trade basket to achieve greater volumes is constrained, whereas it is much easier to buy raw material and have a more bigger trade account than before. Also, you see. Our trade agreement with ASEAN, ITIGA, ASEAN India Trade and Goods Agreement, that's a very old agreement from 2010. The challenge with that trade agreement is that the tariff lines which were available to Indian exporters were very few, duty-free tariff lines, whereas we gave more concessions. So we have a situation where Indian exporters face tariff while exporting to Indonesia, whereas Indonesian exporters don't face those tariffs while exporting to India. So there are several challenges in the trade relationship. It is skewed, it is not balanced. There are tariff and non-tariff barriers. We are undergoing a review of the ITIGA. I believe it will be done by the end of 2025 or even earlier. Once that happens, I think Indian exporters will get a fairer treatment and we should be able to make a more or penetrate more into the Indonesian market. The second point is that Indonesia also has a policy like our Make in India or Atmanirbhar Bharat, known as downstreaming policy or increasing local content. So that also, in ways comes as a barrier or a hindrance to just exporting. So the idea behind that policy, which is I think very fair, is that they want to encourage companies to set up shop in Indonesia to make it here rather than just buying finished products or export only raw materials from Indonesia. So there, some countries have been able to take major benefit. For instance, China has invested in nickel smelters, and then they are processing the nickel here and selling to global markets. Whereas, countries like India has faced challenge, and even Europe, for instance, Europe in fact took Indonesia to the WTO for the ban on export of raw nickel. Or nickel ore. So it's a complex situation. It is not so easy. Our trade basket also, or our exports also were affected by ban on export of agricultural commodities from India. You see, last year we had ban on export of non-basmati rice, ban on export of onions, ban on export of wheat, sugar. So those also contribute to our export. So those bans are still in place. So once they are removed, I think we will find growth in our agriculture export. So we have to understand the political economy of our trade. It's not very simple. It's not a question of just buyer-seller relationship. It is guided by domestic issues. You only mentioned that during the COVID time, Indonesia imposed restrictions on export of crude palm oil. So similarly, restrictions have been put in place by India as well. So that affects the trade.
Right. I agree. But Indonesia, I mean, my I had been there way back 2010, so or 10 and 11, I think I went. But so far as I understand is it is, for a large economy, it is quite a matured market. The consumer market was more matured than us in those days, number one. And number two is, in fact, I found quite a few bikers who love our uh, uh,
Royal Enfield.
Royal Enfield, right? Uh, and and even, if we see the Pisantrans, which is their form of madrasa, they're pretty good, very modern. That is what they call, right? Pisantran.
Something, yeah.
Right. So what is surprising to me is that the trade is pretty primitive in nature. You have only primary goods to trade. Now it is quite okay for energy. It is such a large country. Both are large countries, and the trade is so small. If I compare it with, I think we are the fourth largest trade partner of Indonesia, fourth or fifth. So why? I mean, well, understood that they also have a Matribhumi clause for investment where you have to take local partners. But these are not non-negotiable problems. I mean, we deal with them in many markets. But why not service trade, IT? Where are we? In Indonesia, they have a large market.
Yeah, again, I think we are analyzing the issue, and the points that you're making are very valid. The point is that you see, we didn't have a very favorable free trade agreement with ASEAN. Okay, and the ASEAN trade in services agreement is also not taken off. So there have been restrictions on export of services to. You see, many of our service exports are hindered by the lack of recognition of the degrees. So, you cannot have, let's say, a legal services export to Indonesia, or a chartered accountancies, audit export service to Indonesia because these are not recognized. The point I want to make is that if we look at ASEAN as a whole, rather than only Indonesia, then our exports to ASEAN market is quite healthy. In fact, I think after UAE and US, or no, after US and EU, ASEAN is our third largest export market. And in fact, by the end of the year, maybe it will be our second largest export market. So, Indonesia is a large chunk of that. Also, we should remember that some of the trade and investment that comes into Indonesia is rooted to Singapore.
Exactly.
So if you see the Singapore-Indonesia relationship and the Singapore-India relationship, then and analyze it, you will find some of it is actually coming through Singapore. In fact, many of our big companies have offices in Singapore, and they route their investment from Singapore. So even that is a factor. So it is not a very black and white kind of a situation. If you analyze it, you will find that there are layers in it, and you can explain some of what is happening. Having said that, I agree with you. Given the level of our economies, Indonesia is the fourth largest country in the world. We are the largest country in the world. Big populations, big market. High per capita income in Indonesia. It's a modern country. I agree. The infrastructure, rural infrastructure, schools, colleges are very, very good. There should be more linkages and inter-exchange between Indonesia and India. I agree to that. Having said that, I was just trying to bring to your notice the constraints that we are facing. But despite the constraints, it is very encouraging for me. Personally, it was a revelation where I find that at least 100 Indian headquartered companies are present here. They are all registered here. They are Indonesian companies, and they're doing business. Now, they would not be present here if the business environment was not good, or if they were not making profit, or they were not able to provide solutions to the market. So they are present here, and it's growing. More and more companies are looking at Indonesia. They may not be huge mega investments, but there are small investment companies are setting up shop here, representative offices, and they are looking at opportunities in Indonesia. So that awareness, I think, is growing in the Indian corporate world, and they want to be present here. They understand the potential of Indonesia. So I in the coming years, I think you will see more and more Indian companies setting up shop here and being present in India. Similarly, while the numbers are small, we are also seeing interest of Indonesian companies in India. As of now, I think there are about 13 Indonesian companies who are invested in India, want to set up companies. In fact, a few months back, we came to know of an Indonesian company acquiring a Indian company based out of Kolkata, and they have now deputed their personnel, and they are well in the way of integrating that company into their global business chain. So there are these examples where we find Indonesian companies working with India and setting up shop in India. At the moment, for instance, we are closely coordinating with the government of Maharashtra for a large Indonesian investment in the pulp and paper sector in Maharashtra. So these things are happening, but I will again end by reiterating or agreeing with you that given the range or the capacities that we have both here in Indonesia and in India, our economic exchanges are less. There is full reason to increase them, to intensify them. I think in some ways, while we are neighbors, maybe we were having a back to each other. And while we had each other's back, maybe we were not looking at each other that much. That needs to change. And we need to turn around and see that we can do much, much more with each other. And that will happen. We have recently, signed this LCSS agreement, the RBI and the Bank Indonesia local currency settlement system, the guidelines for which are now being formulated. Once that comes in, it will be easy to make investment and do trade without, paying the transaction costs of doing it in hard currency. We are looking at UPI integration. We are looking at certain other initiatives which will make India and Indonesian economies work closely together.
Okay, but just one, it is nice to hear. I think your website said that there are 5 Indian companies operating in India and 70 Indian companies have offices in Indonesia.
No, that number has changed now.
Right. So you are now saying it's 13. A quick question on both FDI and trade about the third country influence. Now it's quite normal. I mean, the smartphones going to UAE are not consumed by UAE. They are going to several other destinations as well. So no problems if the business is happening through Singapore. But I'll be very keen to know that because how Indonesia is growing without Indian IT. That is quite a question to me.
No, that's not true. Indonesia is not growing. Indian IT is very much present in Indonesia.
No, my question is whether there is a guesstimate or kind of an estimate of the kind of trade and investment that is flowing through third country.
No, it's very difficult to capture that. But I must say that many of the Indonesian giants, the big companies, have huge IT connections with India. Many of the banking software are actually developed by Indian companies. Tata, TCS, Wipro, Tech Mahindra, and some other big names are strongly present in Indonesia, and they do business in Indonesia. They provide services to Indonesian companies. Also, Indonesian companies have back office work, not necessarily back office, even development work in Indonesia. And in fact, some of the companies have acquired companies in India who are then now providing services to them in Indonesia. So the story is actually not everything that happens is known to us. That is one point which I would like to make. But the company to company ties are very strong, and they work with Indian companies. Indian IT experts are present in many companies. Many Indian professionals are present here in Indonesia, working and being CTOs or even financial officers or even CEOs of Indonesian companies. So India may not be present in terms of investment, but they are certainly present in terms of professionals and in terms of technical know-how and expertise.
Right.
Regarding your smartphone question, you see, these decisions are actually taken by the corporate. Now, it is for Apple to understand whether the iPhones being sold in Indonesia. Check this with many companies. Several multinationals have their manufacturing in India, but then they use that manufacturing for the Indian market or for Western market. And they prefer to bring things made in China or in Taiwan or in Philippines or in Vietnam to the Southeast Asian. So this logic is more apparent to the corporates. It's not for me to tell Apple, oh no, why don't you sell iPhones made in India in Indonesia? I cannot take that call. It's for them to decide.
I agree. I agree. I mean, Indonesians have there is a greater acceptance to Chinese goods in that Southeast Asia, even in Philippines.
Chinese are now more Vietnam. You see, many of the things that we buy, even in India, I see if you look at the label, it's made in Vietnam. Laptops and all are made in Vietnam. Vietnam has come out
And they
a very
divide
powerful
the
alternative to
MNCs,
China.
divide the geographies kind of, that where to
Yes.
target, depending on the acceptability also. So, sir, we have such a old defense ties. I mean, I think it's around 5 or 6 decades old. The importance of Indonesia has only increased with Indian engagement in the South China Sea. It is now the Indonesia is important both for Indo-Pacific as well as South China Sea. But we are while we could make a footstep in Philippines through BrahMos. We barely converted our defense ties into trade and investment. Is there any move in this direction? I think we tried to sell BrahMos at one point, but it is still not there.
Yeah, you are correct that our defense ties go back many, many years. And in fact, they are very robust at the moment also. We do a lot of joint exercises. Our ships and aircraft frequently come to Indonesia, either on bilateral visits or they are staging for movement towards East Asia or Australia. Even last week we had an Indian ship here. We had a P3 Orion. That exchange is strong and happening. Indonesian vessels also visit India. We do many exercises. We do Milan. We participate in bilateral exercises. We participate in multilateral exercises. We also have been having this coordinated patrol in the Andaman Sea for many, many years now. I think it's 50 or 60 coordinated patrols we've had. We recently did trilateral exercise with Australia. So the defense relationship is strong in terms of training. Indonesian officers go to India for training. Indian officers, at the moment, there are 4 or 5 Indian officers training in Indonesian academies. So that force-to-force exchange is strong. We have Army, Air Force, Navy staff talks. The DG Coast Guard was supposed to be here the week he sadly passed away. We had the visit of a Coast Guard ship. We are in the process of signing an MOU with their Coast Guard organization. So that exchange has been happening. You are right in saying that defense exports have not taken place to the extent that one would like. But that has also been because our own defense industry story or the success story is very recent. Only now we are making or indigenizing defense equipment and systems, and we have been exporting to other countries. But that's a very recent story. To capture that, we held in April this year a defense exhibition in Indonesia. About 50 Indian companies came here. We are participating in the Bali Air Show. We are participating in the Indonesia Defense Exhibition, which will take place in November. So we are trying to make an inroad. Indian PSUs, defense PSUs, as well as private sector companies like Tata's and L&T and others, Mahindra, they are exploring the market. On BrahMos, I don't think the story is over. There is a continuous exchange going on. Indonesia is yet to make up its mind. We are hopeful that it will be in favor of BrahMos, but these decisions are sovereign decisions, so I would not like to comment on that. But I don't think the chapter is closed. It's still open, and we are in still discussions with Indonesia on BrahMos, because the product is a superior product. Everyone understands it. We have held several rounds of discussion with the users. They are all convinced about the product. So there may be other issues involved, including finance, that those discussions are yet to be completed. But I would like to say that in defense industry, we have been sharing the story of India's defense industry with Indonesia. There's a great deal of interest in that. They are also looking at production of defense systems within the country. Their defense inventory is very similar to ours, buying from several countries and then having issues with inventory and spares. So we are trying to help them in that. But some work is in progress, and we hope to have some positive results in the coming months.
Sir, Indonesia is going to have a new president, I think, within in less than 2 months. And so what is the political outlook? The new president is from military background. So how would it augur for us?
Well, the new president will assume office on October 20th. So everyone is looking forward to that transition. Indonesia is one of the largest democracies in the world. And, elections took place in in February 2024. So just like India, peaceful transition of power takes place in Indonesia. And, it has seen uninterrupted democracy since 1998, after the new elections were held after 1998. So this is another glue which binds Indonesia and India, and we have had a great deal of exchanges with the incoming administration. Their teams have visited India. They are looking at some of the social sector initiatives in India, particularly the midday meal scheme, the food security, they are interested in our public stockholding, food security situation, how we are able to ensure food security despite being a large population. Also, they have interest in pharmaceuticals and some other areas where Indonesia is keen to learn from the Indian experience. So that exchange is already happening, and we are happy to be of any use to the new administration as it comes up with its policies and implementation. So we do not see much. The ties between India and Indonesia are very friendly. It has grown during the tenure of President Joko Widodo. Both India and Indonesia held the chairmanship or the presidency of the G20, and there a great deal of exchanges took place. Prime Minister visited Indonesia in November of 2022, and then again in September 23. President Jokowi visited India in 2023 during our presidency. So high-level exchanges have taken place. Our ministers have been visiting each other, and we see, largely the continuity in our relationship, and we just hope that we will be able to expand the areas of interaction and do much more between India and Indonesia.
Okay. The final comment. I think you are there for another 2 years at least. So during what kind of change that we can expect in this period? One, you said, is about air connectivity. That
you see, there is only so much that an ambassador can do. You see, our job is to push the relationship. Our job is to convert but windows into doors, and openings into opportunities. And similarly, my colleague in Delhi, Ambassador Ina Krishnamurthy, is trying to do the same. But I would actually look at 3-4 areas where we feel that we should be able to contribute more to Indonesia. Of course, one is more greater air connectivity. Second is we look forward to digital integration, with LCSs coming into play, and then UPI integration. We are looking at health. We are looking at greater cooperation between hospitals in Indonesia. At least 2 of them may be up and running in the coming year, and also we would like to see more patients from Indonesia going to India, because Indonesia spends a lot on health sector of patients getting advanced healthcare in other countries. I think that bill can come down drastically if patients go to India. That is one area where we can work together. Also, more training and cooperation between hospitals and doctors between the 2 countries. A lot of Indian private sector hospitals have shown interest. They are entering into relationships and partnerships. Another area is pharmaceuticals. I think there is great opportunity for Indian generic medicines to be manufactured here and then supplying to the Indonesian and global market. So I see 3-4 areas where I think we will see more interaction between Indonesia and India.
Thank you so much for giving time.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be on your show.